but okay. So let's get started. We're beginning our third class of this pretty intensive course, Becoming Your Best Self. So it's a 6-week course. It's fine to join whenever you do because each of the classes is like a standalone topic. So I was kind of thinking, and I've had a few emails from a few of you about why can't we even think about becoming our best self or focus on ourselves when the whole world is burning, when the whole world seems to be coming to an end, disaster after a disaster. And I think I'd like to encourage you, we don't have to be reticent about it, because normally we start working on ourselves when things go wrong in our own life. And then when things start getting better again, we kind of leave it aside and go off and just get involved in our life. And so we've kind of associated working on ourselves with just ourselves. But actually, we have to work on ourselves when we're feeling okay as well, so that we've got this strength and resilience that we can take into the world, so we can be of use to the world. So rather than kind of dropping everything when we're feeling okay, right then when we're beginning to feel okay, that's when we start really trying to become our best self, so that we get super strong and big-hearted and develop our wisdom and everything while our conditions are really good, because it's really hard to do when we've collapsed into a heap, as many of us are finding in the recent weeks. So nevertheless, there's nothing like a bit of urgency to really focus the mind, and so we're going to use that rather than continue to collapse into a heap. We're going to use it to actually be able to become our best self for ourselves, and then mostly so that we can then be of use in the world, that we can really benefit others. So all of these skills that we're learning over these 6 short weeks, they're going to be useful whether we're religious or not, whether we're Buddhist or not. They're all things that are really good to know how to do and to have in your kit bag of life skills. So what we'll do is a little short recap of what we covered last week, and then see if there's anything that came out from the reflection sheets, and then we'll do a short settling meditation, then jump into the topic of today. So let's get the screen share up, and we can just jolt your memory a little bit about what we talked about last week. So first week we talked about happiness, the 3 types of happiness, and the hedonic happiness, which is, where we're kind of happy-go-lucky. It's when our conditions are good. It's the kind of pleasure that we get from our senses. But if we focus all of our time on that, it distracts us from actually developing a calm, peaceful state of mind. And that's an inner state of mind. It doesn't come from outside, from things outside of us. It has to come from us. And because we kind of get distracted by the external things, we don't focus on this inner flourishing. We also looked at the power of a good motivation. Having a motivation that includes our own benefit. We have to start with ourselves or it's not authentic, but also the benefit of others, because we're part of a whole community. We're part of the world, whether we kind of recognize it at the time or not. And when we're distracted by the worldly concerns, just, those superficial things to do with that lesser form of happiness, it really distracts us and corrupts us from our core values, from what matters to us. We take the hook and then we suffer. So a good motivation short circuits that whole process. And so the good motivation we'll also look at today, because it's a motivation that's a really big one, not just for feeling better today or this week or this year or even just this life, but the really long term, the big picture. And we also looked at cognitive fusion, which means we are a slave to the belief that our happiness comes from outside of ourselves. And we will look at cognitive fusion again today, just briefly, because it comes back again and again. So the reflection sheets. How did we go? Did anything come up from the questions from last week? Anything of note? Any difficulties? They were about, how we react to the worldly concerns. And also they were about, did you discover or are you engaging in any activities that you enjoy that have a long-term benefit? So, that benefit yourself and others and are sustainable. So over to you. Who's got something? Did anyone have any activities that they do that you enjoy doing and that have a long-term benefit?
I'll go. I'll share.
Okay,
I think.
Isabella. Yeah.
Yeah, I love yoga. Yoga has been extremely transformational for my mental health and my body and my creativity, all elements, really,
Uh-huh.
mentally, intellectually, physically, spiritually. Um,
Yeah. And
whereas,
so then
yeah,
uh, when you're enjoying it, then what happens afterwards? Does it transfer into the rest of the day?
absolutely. I think the enjoyment has evolved as well, naturally. Originally, the reasons why I was compelled to start, the motive and the intention was different. And as the years have
Mm.
transpired and I've evolved and my relationship with the practice has evolved, the my intention has changed and the benefits that I receive from the practices in turn change as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that's the exact kind of thing that I'm looking for. That's something, because we need to have a baseline of happiness to be able to progress. We can't do it from a state of stress. So this is
absolutely.
really excellent. You've got a go-to, and then you use that to keep on going. So well done. Excellent.
Thank
This is
you.
good.
Thank you. And I'd love to share
Peggy.
as well. Oh,
Oh, sorry.
no, that's okay. I'll share one more thing that I was reflecting as well on how discipline and structures also create more freedom and happiness and the capacity for pleasure can and bliss and enjoyment in life can also be held in discipline and commitment. And when you
Mm,
provide that container and structure in your life to flow and to feel free because you have that safety and stability
yeah,
over
that
time.
is, yeah, yeah.
It's
So
beautiful.
actually, we're going to be talking about exactly that, how that discipline and structure can really help us today, because we're looking at the 3 higher training. So that's in there. So you're already off and running there, Isabella. That's great. Now, Peggy, you had your hand up too.
Well, it's very much like Isabella, but for me, I live by the ocean. I live in Half Moon Bay. And so walking is really important to me. So I walk every day and just seeing the birds and hearing the birds and um, that makes me have a lot of gratitude for where I live, which is very helpful, and also for the things that I see. But I agree with Isabella that because I like structure in my life too. So, if I do that every day, that's really important. And the land of the medicine Buddha has that incredible path that you go around in the redwoods and look at the different sayings, the Buddhist sayings, and that is a marvelous place to
I've
reflect.
seen that. I've seen photos of that, and
It's
I
it's
wanted to be able to
incredible.
do something like that in our own centre. Actually, it's really inspiring.
It is, and the neat thing about it when I go with different people, I always there's always different reflection. And then I also have reading and meeting friends, which is really important for me.
And so when you say reading, books or social media or
No
magazines
books.
or
No
books?
books, but
Great.
any range of books. It can be
Yeah.
nonfiction, it can be fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then meeting friends, but that was interesting thinking about meeting friends because that's really important to me. But I did realize in some of these reflection questions that some of my not reaching out, I'm on a receiving end of people inviting me places, but not necessarily wanting to invite people. And I realized that I have a problem with rejection. You know, that if I invite,
Ah,
so there was some really, because one of these questions talks about why you don't do it, I think. Why you know
yeah,
that you should, but you don't. And
yeah.
I really, yeah, anyway, looked at that and I
Yeah,
thought, oh,
yeah. So it's great. So you're starting the analysis and so if you recognize, oh yeah, this fear of rejection that many of us have, I just assumed everybody does, but not everybody does. Some people are much more courageous, but I
yeah.
had that too. But take the analysis and start thinking, analyzing what meaning do you draw from the rejection? Because it's not the rejection, it's the meaning that we assume. So if we find out that someone was late to meet us because they had a car accident, we're like, oh, that's okay then. We
Mm-hmm.
don't even worry,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, they had a car accident. We're like, oh, that's okay. They haven't rejected us. But it's
Right,
because we put
right.
this meaning into the rejection. So just start, as Venerable Ravina says, just write it down. Write down what is rejection saying. Write it down and then you'll see it. So
Mm-hmm.
you're already well on the way. Fantastic. Really
Thank you.
good. Uh, yeah. So let's see. Is anybody else wanted to share anything? Oh yeah, Lily.
It was just a funny coincidence, I guess, but both of the things that I wrote on my list was yoga, so it was very much aligned with what Isabella was bringing up, and how my intention over the 8 years I've been doing it just keeps getting richer and richer in terms of. And then the other thing that Peggy said was exactly on my list of that one thing that brings me happiness is spending time with people that matter to me, and that um, what stops me from doing that is the feeling of them not being available, not wanting to do it, or and
Yeah,
the layers I put on that.
the layers. That's right. And then of course remember that just like with shyness, if we're shy and the other people are shy, then we all just stay really isolated. So I've learned because at SPC and I have to be a bit of a host sometimes. What I say to myself is, I'm going to carry the shyness. And so I'll wear that and I'll take the step so that you don't have to experience it. So we can do that with rejection too. We can think, okay, I'm scared of rejection, they're scared of rejection. I'm going to carry it for everybody and reach out. And if they reject me, then I'll cry and then I'll rise again from the ashes. But you can do it as an act of generosity just within to think, I'll carry their fear of rejection too. And it might make them more relaxed to be able to say, oh, hey, I can't make it because, I just can't get out of bed or, so it's not a personal thing. Gives just a little bit of space.
Yeah.
But it's very nice. We've got these themes, isn't it, already? These themes together. So let's have a look what we're going to look at today. Why are we here today? We're going to look at what we actually need to train in. So these are things that don't come naturally, but they're skills we all absolutely need. So how to live ethically. You may be much better at this than me, but I really need things spelt out, and ethics do not come naturally. I need to be convinced. So I needed to be taught about this. Concentration, we all want it. We don't necessarily have it. And the only way to get it is to get trained in it and then practice. And wisdom, again, we so many times wonder, what do I do here? What do I say? We're all at a loss. So the wisdom also is something that we train in, how to think, how to analyze. We have an initial burst, but if we're not trained in it, it can backfire. So these three skills, ethics, concentration, and wisdom, they're good for just daily life, but they also are skills that if we take them with an altruistic motivation, they become higher trainings, and they are the skills where we can completely overcome problems and end our suffering forever. So without these, there's no liberation from samsara, cyclic existence, and without these, there's no enlightenment. So we really need them, not just for now. I mean, we can see how crucial they are just for day to day. So somehow or other, I have missed the meditation, and to get it back up again. Oh, it's because I've shared the wrong one. Sorry. We're going to do a little meditation, and I'm going to actually find the right slide. It's a settling your body and settling your mind meditation. And it's a pretty good skill that we need to have. And how often are we able to do it? Hardly ever. We go, oh my God, I have to be able to calm down. Right, here we are. Settling body and mind. Let's set our motivation. So when you're sitting, feel really grounded. So you have a natural posture, but you're upright, where your spine is rising up, but your feet are grounded in the earth. And then gently shift your focus to the breath. And each cycle of in and out creates space for settling. And as you're focusing on each cycle of breathing in and breathing out, various distractions may arise. That's okay. Just as autumn leaves scatter in the wind, thoughts and sensations swirl through our mind. We don't need to chase them. We don't need to sweep them away. We can just let them settle. So as you're focusing on the breath and the body's just naturally breathing itself, watch how your thoughts begin to settle like leaves coming to rest on the autumn floor, on the forest floor. And once the wind has stopped, or the inner chatter, you're just focusing on the breath. The leaves may stir a little bit here and there, but you're not going to get involved in that story. You just notice the leaf, name it, and let it go. And so too, when emotions or thoughts arise, without getting involved, just notice it. It's an emotion or it's a memory. Once you've named it, let it go. Maybe there's some really strong swirls that come up. Even then, notice a name. Notice, it's a real disturbance. And then let it naturally subside without getting involved. And then into this space of natural rest, Let the wind of kindness and curiosity stir your mind. The energy of your altruism, your good-heartedness, your natural curiosity. And moved by this real sense of inner caring and a wish to develop our own personality and being so that we can really help others. Take a nice and deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and let this motivation carry us into the class. So we're looking at the 3 higher trainings today. And like I said, they're called higher trainings because they're not the ordinary ones. They are higher because the intention is higher, and the intention is to stop that cycle of up and down forever, to stop the cycle of samsara. So they're higher because they will lead to liberation or enlightenment. So these higher trainings are how to cultivate ethics and how when we have ethics, it's what creates our happiness, which is kind of a strange thing to say, but it's because we're looking at deeper levels of happiness, not just kind of satisfaction from the senses. How overcoming distraction with concentration. So this is what leads to a peaceful state of mind. And how we can destroy all the negative seeds or the tendency to negativity and confusion in our mind, and we destroy that with wisdom. And so there's this fantastic analogy that we have to remember these 3 higher trainings. So there's this medieval picture here of a guy chopping down a tree. It's kind of like a weird banana tree. So what we have is ethics, and that's like our core strength. It's our body, and so we remember we're embodying our ethics. It's not just something we believe in. We have to walk the talk, isn't it? So ethics is embodying all of our values, and we need good core strength. The 2 arms are the arms of concentration, so that's what holds our mind, and they're essential to be strong and fit and steady. And then the axe is our axe of wisdom. So that's what cuts the root of suffering, that incisiveness. And so instead of just trying to take each leaf off the tree one by one, which is going to take an interminable time, we're going to cut the root of suffering at the root. So we just need to do one cut, isn't it? But if you think about it, how are we at the moment? Well, we don't have much core strength, do we? We get tired very quickly. We kind of get overwhelmed. We act ethically until it's all too hard. And then we snap, we retaliate, we say the thing. Our concentration isn't that strong. So our axe goes all over the place. We can't be incisive. Or we hit the axe and it bounces back up at us, like if you don't know how to wield an axe, you can kill yourself, your own self. And that axe, it's got to be sharp. If it's blunt, it's like a blunt knife is how people get, hurt, isn't it? Not so much from a sharp one. So to give an example about this, it's like if we develop our wisdom, for instance, but we don't have the concentration to follow our train of thought through, we can't hold that train of thought for long enough, we don't come to a correct conclusion. And so what will happen, and what's happened to many Westerners, is we read about wisdom, we read about emptiness and selflessness, and we think, oh, that means nothing exists. We become nihilists. We go too far. So a lot of in the Western canon, the existentialist writers, they analyze reality. They saw there was no inherent existence, and they went too far, and they went, therefore there is no existence at all. And so what happens when you have that worldview? Then nothing matters. then nothing has any consequences. So you're completely divorced from reality. So that's like having too sharp an axe without the strength to hold your analysis to come to a conclusion that's in line with reality. And how do we do that? Well, we've got to be comfortable in our own self. We've got to be comfortable in our own skin. And that's only possible by having and holding ethical behavior. And that's our core strength. So everything comes from that. So you can't have like a great idea and live a life where you're harming others. It's just not going to match. So you can see these 3 higher trainings, they work in very, very well with each other, and they're crucial for each of them to work. So what I thought we'd do is start with the hardest one, which is the higher training in wisdom. And then I've got some handy hints how we can get started as beginners, you know, because it's really overwhelming. This is a training that will cut the very root of samsara. So of course it's going to be difficult. So I've got handy hints to get started. Then we'll have a look at concentration, and I've got some handy hints there. And then ethics, which is the easy one. We'll end on the easy one, because even if all the rest don't make sense, we can all do the ethics. Does that sound? So the concentration one, I'll put the slide up, and because it's a little technical. The higher training in wisdom, a little technical, and we'll just go through it bit by bit. So a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama: "We are at the center of all of our troubles. It's therefore best to work at understanding our true nature first." So this means looking at our true nature rather than trying to work out external things like when did the universe begin, or what's the beginning of time, or how do we split the atom, or all of those things, or kind of theoretical existential questions. Because it's ourselves that suffer, we should start with ourselves, and all of our analysis should start there, because that's what's going to actually help us. So how do we start the analysis? All suffering arises from grasping a false sense of self. Because we grasp at a false sense of self, then we need to defend it, then we get intimidated, then we get upset, then we need to feed it, and the whole catastrophe follows. So then we take it another step and go, it's not just me, but it's actually me and my environment. So all phenomena arise by the collection of many conditions together. And because of this, there is no inherence. So you change one of those conditions and the actual phenomena changes. Where we get stuck, we confuse the dual nature of reality. We confuse what is relative and what is ultimate. And we think all of our relative existence is true and real, and the ultimate existence we don't recognize as being fluid, in flux. And because we get this mixed up, it's the root of our suffering. So where do we start with this? By remembering things, you know, objects, people, and problems do not exist in the way they first appear. That's our starting point. Things do not exist in the way that they first appear. So things appear I don't mean visually, but to our mind. So I'll give you an example. You know, like when you meet a nun or a monk at a Dharma center, and most most of the nuns here at Langri Thomas Center, they're retired women, and so they're middle-aged or elderly, and I'm really surprised when I hear that they had a past. Like if they might have been married or they've got grown-up kids. I'm like, what? Because I meet a nun and I just think they've always been like that. They've always been a nun. So intellectually, I know that's not true. But what I'm grasping at is as if that is true. And the evidence is because I'm shocked when I hear, oh, they used to be a carny and travel around Australia with the circus. I'm like, what? Could this be? So that's what it means when we say things do not exist in the way they first appear. That's what happens all the time. You know, we see somebody and we can't imagine them when they're a kid. It's a shock. It's a shock. Or, you know, we see someone who's been really battered by life and we just think, oh, they're a battered, broken person. And we can't even imagine that once they were fresh-faced and positive and, you know, and open-hearted. We see a cranky person and we think, oh, cranky old man or cranky old woman, but we never think, oh, you know, fresh-faced, open-hearted little kid. That was once them. So you get the idea, right? This is so easy to go wrong. It's just a habit that we have. We just grasp at the appearances and then we think those appearances are real. So that's what the grasping means. We believe in them. We think they're true. Something appears as a disaster, as a problem, and we think it is. And therefore, we shut every other possibility down. It's actually not in tune with reality. And that's why we suffer. And of course, my favorite example about who doesn't do this so much is entrepreneurs. You know, they find the little kink where everyone thinks it's a disaster and they find the way in, the way to make the money. But the tragedy of that is that it's motivated by the worldly concerns, gain, profit, you know, ripping others off or whatever. It's not necessarily motivated by making the world a better place. You know, because those 8 worldly concerns that we talked about last week, they're really big motivators most of the time. And so entrepreneurs are really good at not believing the appearances. So we've got to take that skill, but use it with an altruistic motivation. So, I mean, there's a huge amount I could say about that, but are there any questions before we go into what else we can do? Is there, yeah, Maria, sorry.
Would you say more about how nothing has an inheritance? Thank you.
Yes. So because things, and including ourselves, you know, we are a result of causes and conditions. So we're a result of our education, of our gender, of what our upbringing was like, the type of parents that we have, our health, whether we're tall, whether we're short, all of those things. So those causes and conditions all contribute to who we are. And yet we somehow feel I'm me, unchanging, permanent, some essence of me, and all of that stuff is just happening to me. So in fact, if one of those things changes, for instance, if our health changes, our whole personality changes. So there's no inherence. There's no kind of, you know, unchanging, everlasting essence in there. There is a continuity, but it continuously changes. And it depends on how we relate to it as to how we feel about ourselves. So all of that, therefore, there is no inherence. That's the short, bastardized answer. To get the real answer, you'll have to go to Geshe Cherub's teachings. He's incredibly clear about all of this, really amazing. There is also a section in the Yangtze Rinpoche book, Practicing the Path, on the 3 higher trainings where he talks about this, that I've got most of my information based this class on because it's really clear. So I'll give you a couple of other examples. Cognitive fusion. So I said I'd come back to that. So cognitive fusion is another way of saying grasping at inherence. It's something as being permanent, true, real, with its own, you know, unchanging essence, or inherent. And how this happens is because we have this mechanism of cognitive fusion, and that's just through habit. So I've got a couple of really easy examples for you. So one of them, fusing the behavior and the person. So we've all been to a supermarket and seen a child having a tantrum on the floor. And so when it's an adult, if it was an adult having a tantrum on the floor, we'd go, oh, you know, it's a bad adult. But with a child, we kind of know they're not in control of their own mind. So we instead of thinking, oh, a bad person or a bad child, we go, oh, it's a child acting badly. You know, we're trying to separate the person and the behavior. And how we do it is we recognize they're not in control of their emotions. They are being controlled by all their afflictive mind states. They're not in control of their own mind. But anyone who's worked in early childhood development will say, well, actually, it's not a child behaving badly either. Is it a bad child or is it a suffering child? Because a child behaving badly is a child demonstrating that they're suffering. And so early childhood behavior experts know this and then address that suffering, and then the child naturally behaves well. So it's like addressing it from the inside. So the Buddhist point of view will actually go even deeper than that and say it's not even a suffering child, but it's your Buddha nature trying to burst through. It's your Buddha nature going, something here is not right. Pay attention to the reality, and it's trying to burst through. And as it does, it's painful. So it's really helpful to remember this about children and then transfer over to the adults, because the adults are just better at hiding things. But the same thing, they're not in control of their own minds. And so once we recognize that we can forgive the bad behavior and we start feeling for the person who's under the control of others, other people, other circumstances, and their own emotions. There's a couple of other ones with the cognitive fusion. So cognitive deficit, in a difficult situation, we can't see any benefits, so we can't change. So for instance, going to the dentist, you know, it's like, no, the dentist is a suffering experience, therefore it is bad. Therefore I'm not going. That's cognitive fusion. And so it's the psychological term is cognitive deficit, which is another word for aversion. Buddhist terminology, aversion. Psychology, cognitive deficit. He's, the dentist to bring pain, and we forget the dentist is going to bring health. Cognitive hyperactivity, that's another word for attachment. Buddhist term, attachment. Psychology, cognitive hyperactivity. In a pleasant situation, we overvalue the enjoyable qualities. And for instance, like in my case, I think that a drink, all those glasses of champagne, will bring pleasure. And I was continuously shocked that it would also bring a hangover. So this cognitive fusion, it just dominates us the entire time, doesn't it? So then I was trying to think of an example. How do we cut the cognitive fusion, and how do we cut through it? And so one thing I thought was, because you know we're all still reeling from the results of the American election. I mean, here in Australia we are, and probably other places in the world, let alone you poor Americans. My heart goes out to you every day. But I thought, okay, so what about, here's an experiment. If we thought there is, amongst our compatriots in our class today, there is a MAGA supporter, and you don't know who it is. So if there was a MAGA supporter, does your feeling about everybody in the class change? How you feel about people, you know? So if it does, that means you've got cognitive fusion. If it doesn't, that means you're free of it. But the moment we think, oh, there's someone who's a MAGA supporter, you know, now we've separated out me and others. And why has that happened? Because I have conflated the person and their beliefs. Beliefs that I think are bad, held by a person, therefore the person is bad. And now I have cognitive fusion. And once I think it's a bad person, now I've lost my humanity towards them. And I have nothing in common and I can't care about them. And suddenly I think, oh my God, now I'm not in safe company. It's terrible, isn't it? So we have cognitive fusion because we fuse the person and their politics. And then if we don't agree with the politics, we disrespect the person. We disregard them. And if we do agree with the politics, then we think, therefore, the person is good. You're not be good at all. Both ways it gets us. But either way, we lose our humanity with others. So at the very least, to just recognize there's that mechanism happening and to try and pull it back. And how do we do it? We find what we have in common. And, what we have in common is feelings, is belief, something really simple like that. We're human brothers and sisters. Now, was another story. Here's the second story for you today. So in Australia, we've had a kind of resurgence of, what are they? They're a bit like the incels. So these, bunches of young men that all dress in black and balaclavas, and they're kind of like neo-Nazis, and they're mirroring a lot of what we hear about coming from America. Anyway, so there was a bunch of about 30 guys like this that all travelled to a little town in New South Wales to stage this kind of demonstration, like Make Australia Great demonstration, wearing all black and balaclavas. And they went into the centre of this little town, which is a multicultural town in Australia, and stood in two lines, and then just stood there with their signs, like super intimidating. And everybody in the town freaked out. And so it was really confrontational. And so people were like, we don't want people like this in our town. Get out of our town, get out of our town. And I started thinking about this in the leisure of my own home, because I wasn't, of course, thrown into that situation. And I thought, there's a way to solve this, and it's with sausages. Because a smile and sausages can save the world. If you've got a multicultural town, best thing to do would be to go and set up a sausage sizzle right there in front of those lines of blokes, and just have those smells wafting over. And then, eventually one of them's going to break and just like, stomach says, get a sausage. You go, come on over. If you want a sausage, come on over. Just, you have to take the balaclava off. And then you share a sausage. So I can see you're all smiling there, right? So good. Sausages will save the day. Does this work? Because we're getting below the beliefs. We're recognizing what we actually have in common is a love of food. It's that we can't handle being hungry, and that's our common humanity. And it's really basic. And now suddenly that's the space to be friends. And that's why so many, community gardens in big housing commission flats and community cook-ups, why they work, because it's a profound activity of finding the commonality. And then the cognitive fusion just melts away. Okay, so to sum that one up, then what we can do, so with wisdom, encourage our realizations. Remember, there is this discrepancy between the appearance and the reality. Things appear in one way, they may not exist in that way. So it's healthy to have just take things with a pinch of salt. Don't get too excited and don't get too despondent. Beware of cognitive fusion. And as Corey says, hey kids, don't do cognitive fusion. Forget about drugs, don't do cognitive fusion. When it comes to our Buddhist philosophy and our own study, it's really important that we work on our own mind first rather than get into abstract philosophy. There's a real tendency to want to delve into the nature of reality and this and that, and I do it myself too. I love reading books about quantum physics and, you know, popular books, not hard ones, but it can be a real red herring. We've got to, if we want to really develop, we've got to take all of that intellectual curiosity and put it onto working on recognizing, who am I really? What is the nature of myself? What about my own emotions? What's happening within my own mind? Because that's where it's relevant. Otherwise, we run a danger of becoming insensitive to others and a bit brutal with ourselves. So the wisdom of selflessness, no inherent self, really try and bring that home with your own examples. Who you are depends. It depends. That's the bumper sticker one to remember. And then, so that's on one side in terms of your own practice of how to encourage your own realizations. It's like applied Buddhism, not theoretical Buddhism, applied Buddhism. And if we don't apply it, we're in big trouble. On the other side of things, make sure that we follow authentic teachings. And so in our external world, we live in what's called a post-truth world. So we have to check our sources. So a post-truth world means that, as we've seen in the media everywhere, truth is not the currency anymore. Feelings are the currency. Truth hasn't had any currency for quite a few years, ever since we heard the term fake news and alternative facts. Now, their result, they show that we're in a post-truth world. And even before that, I mean, William Burroughs said, you know, nothing is true, therefore everything is permitted. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Now, that comes from The Naked Lunch. So, you know, this has been brewing for a very long time. So in a post-truth world, it's very difficult to tell what to believe in, because it's just like, it's very hard to nail it down. And the reason it's hard to nail it down is because we just believe in the things we like. And the reason we just believe in the things we like is because we're overwhelmed by those 8 worldly concerns, which we looked at last week. So you can see how it's this trajectory. It's like a, you know, it's a row of dominoes. So to wind it back, we've got to check our sources. And it's hard to do that when you're being emotive or reacting. You see something on the news, you go, what? And you've reacted before you've even had a chance to analyze. When it comes to Buddhism, also, we've got to check our sources. There's a huge amount of stuff on YouTube of very dubious provenance. And how do we check our sources? What are their peers saying about them? This teacher who I'm listening to, what do their peers say about them? Who are their teachers? And how are their students acting? It's like due diligence. We've got to do due diligence on everything. And that way, naturally, we'll be able to keep ourselves safe. The Buddha said, you know, don't just take what I say true as true because I'm the Buddha. Even the Buddha said that. He said, first off, check, is it reasonable, logical? So you've got to do the analysis. Does it stand up to reason and analysis? That's one. The other one is you check, does it accord with my own experience? Does this sit well with me? Does this illuminate things that have happened in my own life? And if it doesn't, you're okay to put it aside. Because just having a theory because we like it or because we're frightened of it, either of those, it's not really a safe way to progress. And So then once we do that, once we check our sources, then we've got to retrain our thinking and our feeling. So we often think, oh yeah, we've got to retrain our thinking, but that's not enough. Especially for us Westerners, where we are really pushed around by our emotions. They really dominate everything, and if we don't recognize them, they then color our own theoretical investigations. So how we retrain our thinking is using our words and being very clear with how we describe things. It's about reframing things. That's how we train. So here's one that you can all do as Americans. When you're talking about politics, just when you're talking about the Republicans, just say Republican people. And when you're talking about Democrats, just say Democrat people. Just try that. Just add people to everything. And it's going to change how you think and how you feel. I mean, you can do it with everything. Cat people and dog people. Like, yeah. For us, if we get the words right, then the mind will follow. And that will bring us some stability. And then we can start really working deeply on our mind. Are there questions about this one? How are we going? Our what to do with developing wisdom. So yeah, check the sources, retrain your thinking and retrain your feeling. So your feeling, just think about a smile and some sausages, and constantly use your words to reframe. So I put this little picture of a funny little house down the bottom, you know, that a kiddie drew, because when we first start out, our analysis feels like this, all kind of clunky and embarrassing. But eventually we're going to be able to have a beautiful architect's drawing. And that's just through training, because every architect that can draw an incredible drawing started off drawing houses like this. It's just that they put in more hours than us so far. So we can do it too. And how do we do that? Using our words really carefully. Okay, so in the next one, higher training in concentration. So concentration is a mental factor that's capable of abiding one-pointedly on an object of virtue without distraction. So this is a really nice definition, you know, that it's not just being able to concentrate for as long as you want, but it's on an object of virtue. So it's being able to focus your mind on something that you determine to do so. And because it's an object of virtue, it's going to result in happiness. So a shoplifter or a sniper also has concentration, but it's not on an object of virtue. So it's not going to result in a calm, peaceful state of mind. With the higher training in concentration, if you do develop this type of concentration, the result is mental and physical pliancy, meaning a level of fitness in our mind and our body that means we're strong and fit. And I think when you're talking about yoga, this is what I'm talking about. That kind of physical pliancy that also then there's a mental pliancy too, of fitness, relaxation, strength, ability, and it's naturally blissful. I mean, Isabella, you said this too. It's like the result isn't just neutral, it's a good feeling. This good feeling engenders good qualities. And those good qualities then benefit others. So you can see this type of concentration, it's really different from when we just think of focus, you know. It's not like corporate concentration. This is concentration on developing the skills of our mind and our ethics, and that will naturally result in a happier, peaceful person and world. Now, this is what Yangtze Rinpoche says. Usually our minds are like cities of distraction, giving rise to countless superstitious thoughts, conceptual thoughts. But calming our mind, calming this and focusing on virtuous objects is the basis for cultivating realizations. And without this, it's just intellectual. And so then we still have suffering. So when we study, when we cultivate realizations, it's got to come from this really deep, calm state of mind. Otherwise, it's just an intellectual thing. And it means it's like the axe, it'll just bounce off. It won't stick. So the type of realizations that we want to develop are ones that we can then draw on in an emergency when things go wrong. So normally when things go wrong, we just react, don't we? We fall back to whatever our baseline is. But if we can develop our concentration, then it's like those two strong arms, then we have a real confidence in our strength. We have confidence that we'll be able to work things out. We don't panic. As Venerable Rabina often says, how we panic in a situation. So what stops the panic is having this skill of concentration. And it's even just the skill of when something happens to just go, breathe. It's okay. You don't have to panic. And then you can think about the thing. And it's totally different than just reacting straight away. Oh, no. So how to develop our concentration? There are some handy hints. How do we get started? And you're probably doing some of these already, and I'd like to hear if you are doing some of these. So the object of focus, what we focus on, and then the type of focus that we have. So first off, what we should be focusing on to set things up, the environment. They say to have to be in a place of solitude, but this actually doesn't necessarily mean physical solitude. It means that our mind is in a state of solitude. So we're free of social media. We put our phone outside the room. We release all of those obsessions. We take away all the pleasurable distractions like pets. We try and also stop indulging in all the lists, because once you sit down and you clear your mind, you get ready to meditate, that in that spaciousness, everything comes up of the things, oh, that's right, I had to do this. I've got to remember to do that. Or you have a really good idea. So all of that naturally comes up when you create some space. So you've also got to write them down and release them. Let them go. And the last thing to the solitude, being free of alcohol or drugs. So if you need a cup of coffee to be able to sit down and meditate without falling asleep, there's something wrong. What you actually need to do is have a sleep, then get up and meditate. Now, you might think this is really obvious, but how many times do I see people come to meditation on a Thursday night and have a really big cup of coffee beforehand? Oh no, there's something really funny here. So physical solitude, getting the circumstances right, and then the mental solitude, free of rumination on the objects of lust or hatred. So this can be quite hard, because if we're just going around and around in our mind on how terrible things are or how bad somebody is, there's no peace there. And the same thing, if we're going around and around in our mind about how excited we are about something to happen, or I can't wait to get this thing, also there's no peace there. So once this rumination, once it's already going, you can't stop it by force. Just like, as you know, if you sit down to meditate, you can't just go, okay, stop thinking. It can't be done. You cannot force it. And if you try and force it, it's being quite brutal to yourself. So once that rumination's already started, there's probably two things you can do. One is to replace those thoughts with some other thoughts of the same momentum and intensity. So, for instance, if you've got real excitement about something that you're going to get, you're going to buy a new car or something like that, or then instead of that, put that aside and start putting in place in your mind thoughts of rejoicing of everybody else that has a car, rejoicing at the public transport system, rejoicing that there are roads from here to there that you can travel on. So you put in something else because the momentum's already started. So it's like changing the channel. If you've got rumination about how you hate something and you cannot bear it for 1 second longer, you can't stop that feeling. That feeling's already happening. It's like adrenaline's already happening. You can't stop it. So you'd have to redirect it and you replace it with something good. And if you have a feeling of hatred, you put that hatred on a valid object. What do you hate? The afflictive states of mind, the grasping at inherence, the self-cherishing attitude that ruins my life and the lives of everybody else. And you put the hate on a valid object. And handy hint here, it's never a person. It's never a person. So I find that quite useful, that idea of replacing it with something that's going to be beneficial, because it's using the momentum. And someone told me about, I think it was with hostage negotiation. They said in big arguments, in de-escalating arguments or in hostage negotiation, you have to meet the person at their level. So if they're yelling, you yell. And then you bring it down. If they're yelling and you start quietly, there's no connector there. There's no way you're going to make any inroads. So you start by meeting in the same intensity, the same momentum, but you've got a different motivation there. It's not to harm, it's to help. And then once you've grabbed them like that with that momentum, then you can start directing it and bring it down. So it's the same with our emotions. We're hostage to our emotions. So we're hostage negotiating our emotional state of mind. We've got to meet it with something equally strong and turn it to something beneficial. What are you going? If you're hating, what are you going to really hate? The root cause of problems, the grasping at an inherent self, and how that isolates us from others. And then it means that we disrespect others, and then it means we harm them, and then it means they want to harm us back, and so then we get war. So what are we going to hate? The root cause. Okay. And so then Rinpoche said, once you put it on the correct object, the valid object, then you can de-escalate the situation. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said the real holiday, if we really want a holiday, it's a mind free of delusion. And so we can give ourselves a real holiday. Then what to focus on? It's good to choose one object and then focus on that. And from a Buddhist point of view, it's good to choose an inner object. So rather than, say, a beautiful flower or a candle or even a picture, that can be helpful. But what we're trying to do is withdraw our senses from the world, remember? So when you're out in nature and you have a beautiful view, or when you have a picture of the Buddha or a beautiful flower, that can set the scene, but then bring your focus inwards, because we're trying to withdraw from the senses. Even like, meditation music or classical music or whatever, background music, it sets the scene. It really does change our mental state of mind, but don't become reliant on it. Have it to set the scene as like a warm-up, and then bring the mind inward without the input from the senses. So I think that's a little different from like if you do yoga or other meditations, and it's because our aim's different. And then try and what they say, avoid laxity and excitement. So don't get too happy when things are going great, and don't get too despondent when things are going bad. And if you have a meditation session and your mind is all over the place, again, that doesn't mean it's a bad meditation session. In fact, you might think, oh, it was a terrible meditation. Why? Because we have cognitive fusion. We think it felt terrible, therefore it is terrible. No. You might have had a meditation session where your mind is all over the place, but the whole time you were trying to focus your attention, and the whole time you weren't giving in. You weren't giving in to sleep. You weren't giving in to excitement. And so it was this epic battle. But at the end of it, you just, oh my God, I'm exhausted. That was terrible. Actually, that's an excellent meditation session. And all of that one day it'll pay off. I can guarantee it, because that happened to me, teachings with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And you know how he'd teach quite late into the night. And of course, the moment he starts teaching about emptiness, like your eyes start rolling in the back of your head because it's such a difficult subject. And everybody's on the nod. They're all doing the thing, just about headbutting your table. And I was just determined not to fall asleep. And I must have been so delirious that I was rolling around like this because of people poking me. And one time I had to sit on my hands because I didn't know if I was gesticulating or not. Like I had no idea what was going on. At one time I thought I'd said something without even knowing it. So I was terrified that I'd do some really stupid thing. And by like 2 a.m. when the teaching finished, I was almost in tears. I had no idea what Rinpoche was talking about. And I was so frustrated because like my eyelids, I was wishing I could see through my eyelids. I just closed my eyes, but I could still see through my eyelids. And I tried to open them up again. Anyway, I just thought I'll never be able to do it, but I didn't give up. And you know what? After that night, like I've never suffered from sleepiness. It was like I lost the battle, but I won the war because I just didn't give in. And all my delusions in there kind of figured out, okay, we're not going to win. So now I go through a stage where I get that delirious sleepiness, and it's like I just drive through it, like driving through a country town. I go through it and it doesn't overcome me. And I come out the other side and I'm there and I'm focused. And that suffering of trying to struggle to stay awake, it's never hit me like that again. It's really amazing. So courage, folks. Okay, so in this slide, so we've got the real holiday is the mind free of delusion. The type of attention, an inner object, if you can, or at least the main focus on an inner object. Even an object like developing compassion or loving kindness, it's an inner thing. Then avoid getting too excited or too lax. So really try and keep the mind on an even keel and try to achieve and maintain what's called stability, clarity, and intensity. So stability is that your mind stays on the topic, is able to listen to the teaching. Clarity means that you're alert and engaged. You're not kind of just like when you read a book and you don't know what you read a page and you don't even know what you read. It's because of the lack of clarity. So you sharpen your attention so you feel really engaged. And then intensity. That it's a strong focus. And for this, you don't have to do it for very long. A couple of minutes, 5 minutes. Certainly not 20 minutes or an hour, especially for beginners. Start off short and get really good at it. It's like fitness training for the mind. Exactly the same way. You don't start off with a marathon, you start off with little bits. So, questions or comments about the concentration? Yes, Damien, go for it.
Hey, Mary, I was wondering, so let's just say you're meditating and you're focused on something and you're going deep or you're going inward, and then there's a distraction. And what's your advice there? Is your advice to try reel it back to the point of what you were focusing on?
Yeah. So, so notice a name. So when the distraction comes up, just like you said, you notice it as distraction. So instead of noticing it as what particular distraction it is, because then we're getting involved in it, like distraction about I've got to remember to feed the cats. Now suddenly I'm thinking about the cats. So the thought comes up, oh, I've got to remember to feed the cats, and you go, distraction. So it's like a generic thing.
Right.
So notice it, name it, and then put it aside. And which means bring your focus back to whatever your object is, whether it's the breath, whether it's developing loving kindness. So notice a name is the first thing before things get too out of hand. And so that meditation, the settling meditation, I'll put that in with our meditation pack at the end of the course. It's a really nice way to just practice doing that. The other thing, though, that Lama Yeshe said in one of his meditations was that if your mind does get distracted and you completely lose it, like, the whole session crumbles down, then use that as an opportunity to develop your compassion. So instead of getting frustrated with yourself or thinking I'm a no good meditator or all of these things or giving up, use it as an opportunity to go, oh yes, I'm not in control of my mind. I'm under the control of, as Geshe Zobi says, others' control of the afflictions, control of disturbing emotions, control of excitement and attachment, and how terrible this is. And this is what everybody's suffering. This is like the great tragedy. Everybody suffers like this, how terrible it is, and then think, may they be free of it. Just like I wish to be free of it, may they be free of it. So you use it as that frustration that you have to develop your compassion and care for yourself and for others. So it's great because then you can even use a disaster.
Okay, thanks.
So that's already if you've fallen off. But beforehand, notice a name. Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, because there's a bit of grasping to try reel it back to the point of focus.
Yep.
Should we
That's
be
good.
doing that? Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So it's almost like your attention is tethered to the point of focus and it kind of ranges out and then you pull it in, or maybe it ranges around and around, but you try and make it still and bring it in again. And so that's a continuous process. And so that should be what we start at. And then suddenly our attention goes off, and then we'll notice it and we'll go, oh, that's right. Now I've got upset about something. So you notice, oh, it's a feeling. Bring it back. So over and over again. And that's actually what meditation is the ability to bring the mind back.
Great.
And then, our level of fitness, it only goes so far. So at some stage, we should actually be finishing the meditation before we fall off. We should be finishing the meditation while our concentration is still good. And then we feel really good about it. And then very slowly we extend it out. If you've kind of gone for too long, you tried to run the marathon instead, and then you fall off in a big heap, and that's where you use that to generate compassion. So again, you still don't give up. You still don't go throw your hands up and go, oh, this is no good. You sit with that feeling and develop compassion for yourself and others. And that will re-motivate you to come back again tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. Very good. Okay. Oh my gosh. See, I knew we're going to run out of time again, but we've got the next little bit. It's the easy bit, but it's still nice and juicy. The higher training in ethics. So, ethical conduct, meaning refraining from harming yourself or others. So how do we do that? It means we abandon or we refrain from harmful physical and verbal actions, because ethics is about pretty much how we interact with others in the world. So at the least, what we can do is not physically harm them and not verbally say those harmful things. Our mind may still be incredibly exaggerated and completely off the planet, but that's okay. We're not making things any worse because we're restraining physical and verbal actions. So far, so good, but the motivation's important. Best motivation is the determination to become completely free of cyclic existence. So this means we're not motivated by bargaining, like bargaining with God or something, that if I do this, if I'm very, very good, can I have this thing happen? It also means that we're not being very, very good because we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want other people to find out that we're a terrible person. We're not being good because we think we should. It's not an imposed thing. If we rely on our ethics from a sense of whether we'll be found out by others or because we think we should, that's all an external source of motivation. And it means that if that external source of motivation disappears, so do our ethics. So that book, Lord of the Flies, we all had to do that at school here in Queensland. I mean, it's a fantastic book. That's what happens if you take away the external imposition of ethics, then everyone reverts back to cannibalistic behavior pretty much. And that's what happens to us. And we kind of found that same thing happened with COVID, that once the external pressure to behave well from others was removed when we were in lockdown, our whole sense of discipline fell apart. So it's really important that our sense of ethics and discipline comes from within, from an understanding of why we want to hold ethics, not from outside sources, like a sense of shame or of what other people will think of us or what our parents will think of us, or not wanting to get in trouble with the law. Because the thing is, if people act ethically because they don't want to get caught by the law, when the law is not there, then it's like, great, I can get away with anything. So it's got to come from within. It's got to be a reasoned kind of proposition that we've arrived at. And if we can do that, then Yangtze Rinpoche says keeping ethics becomes happiness itself. So I think, Isabella, you were saying this about how the joy of the discipline within yoga, and this is with anything, the joy of a discipline there, of having that structure and then embodying it, bringing it into your life. It makes you feel better, doesn't it? You're stronger, you're more confident, and it's something that comes from within. Like, you learn it externally first, but it's got to become embodied in us. And then it results in happiness. And so, of course, that makes our ethics stronger. I mean, many people also have ethics, and then, to say, for instance, to treat others as you'd like to be treated, or to not betray anybody, or to not have an affair, to stay true to your partner. And all of that is well and good until, say, the partner cheats on you. And then what does half the world do then? Go and have a revenge affair. It's like, well, if they cheated on me, now I'm going to cheat on them. So that's ethics that comes from outside, from thinking everybody should do this and should do that. And if they don't, well, I won't either. It doesn't come from within one's own heart, understanding about why we don't cheat on anybody. So we can kind of tell how our ethics are by if we have any of the revenge responses. Many times we can think, oh, I'm a nice, polite person, until somebody yells at me, and then I'll yell back. You know, there's this funny little double standard. Or people will go, oh yeah, I care about others and things, but don't you threaten my kids. Once you threaten my kids, I'll kill your kids. So we have this idea, oh, I'm an ethical person. But there's a double standard. And there's a double standard because mostly the ethics come from imposed from outside, or they're motivated by their worldly concerns. So if we really cared about our kids, we would naturally care about other kids equally, because we're caring about our kids for them. We understand the child is vulnerable. They need protection. And just like I care about my child, everybody else cares about their own children, and so I have to care about them all. So if we can develop our ethics from within, then we become incorruptible. So then it doesn't matter if we get a huge amount of money or a position of power, we'll have confidence. We won't be corrupted by the power that we have. Even if temptation comes our way, we won't be tempted. And so that kind of confidence in your own ethical behavior means internally you can relax. And it's only if internally we can relax that we can develop concentration. And it's only with concentration that we can develop our wisdom. So you can see how it all leads back to ethical behavior, and that's something we can all do. Thank goodness. If we don't have ethical behavior, then even things that we study, they're not going to enter deeply into us. They're just going to be on an intellectual level, and they'll rot in our own mind. We'll just become academically brilliant, but our whole life will still be a mess. So we really have to try and embody our ethics, and it's hard to be ethical. In a way, though, when everybody else around us is unethical, it makes it very clear how we want to act, how we don't want to act. It's easier. It becomes clearer in our mind. And I found this because in a Dharma center where everybody's trying to be their best self and acting really well and everything, I can start to think, oh, well, I'm a really chilled, patient, tolerant kind of person. But actually, it's nothing to do with me. It's because everybody around me is being very, very good. So I can only tell if I'm tolerant or patient person if I go down to Social Security for the dole, and I think I've said this before. You know, some of these offices, they're in quite rough neighbourhoods, and even the furniture is bolted down so no one can chuck the furniture around. And then you stand in the queue there when everyone's being all rude and pushy, and then you can tell whether you're a tolerant, patient person or not. All right, so we've got our higher training in ethics. Where we can get started, though, we've got all different types of vows. So the worldly vows, marriage vows, scouts vows, citizenship vows, they're all important. We have vows which are called the professional code of conduct. So if you're a counselor or a teacher or a policeman pretty much all of the professions have a code of conduct, how to act and how not to act. And we can really uphold them with pride. And they help us. They help us be a good person, keep us strong. And abiding by the laws of the land, self-evident. So with ethics, how to act, the handy hints Socially, so it's when we're with others and when we're by ourselves. So when we're with others, socially, when you're in company, watch your physical actions and your speech. That's what to focus on. Really make sure that your actions don't harm, that you don't physically retaliate, that you walk away before you want to smash something. And with your speech, really train your speech. Friends with ethics. So instead of friends with benefits, which we've all heard of, we have to cultivate friends with ethics. We must spend time with people that are better than us, with people that have strong ethical conduct, so that all of their goodness can rub off on us. So it's like when we're with the lamas, you know, we really present our best self then, don't we? We get inspired to do so. It becomes easier. So the same thing, we look at who we spend our time with and make sure that we spend our time with not just people that we enjoy their company, but people that are a better type of person than us. And that's going to be friends with really good ethics. And make sure you spend time with them because it'll give you strength. And if you don't have friends with ethics, then recognize, gee, it's going to be hard for me to keep my head above water, and make sure you plan for that. Become active in civil society. Are you part of the problem or part of the solution? So according to whatever our level is, we've got to be active in some way. And that means community and politics and meditation. And when we're out in the world, try and approach the world with a sense of humility and respect for others. So even with politics, this is what the Democrats people are saying about the Republicans people, is that the Democrats people actually didn't have respect for the whole other half of America. Just didn't take them seriously. And so look what happens. If you disregard one section of humanity, regardless of what the actual physical circumstances are, it's how people feel. If people feel disregarded or disrespected, we'll never get the best out of them. So it's really tough, isn't it? Because it's always the oppressed that have to make the first move. It's always the ones that are suffering that have to make the first move. It's always the so-called minorities that have to make the first move of open-heartedness. It's never the oppressors that do it. And it's never the disturbing emotions that go, oh, I've had my day now. I think I'll leave you alone for a while. No, we have to make the effort ourselves. And so how do we do that? By having friends with ethics, and then developing a sense of humility that everybody I meet on the planet, I can learn something from them. That's it. It's that simple. And then when one's on one's own, then that's when we watch our own mind. And so Corey Jackson often calls this practicing good mental hygiene, which is good meditation practice. Make sure that you read some books that are going to stimulate your mind and help you along the path. Don't just do the doom scrolling. Good mental hygiene. And if you do have a code of conduct, like whatever form of vows or professional code of conduct, be really proud about it. So uphold it with gusto, in fact. And so this is why I put this superpower, lady with the 6 arms, a bit like a cross between Batgirl and Jeff Bezos. So this is like your cloak of your professional conduct. It becomes a superpower that you may not feel like a good person, but you can at least uphold your professional code of conduct. And that's something to be fiercely proud of. It's this really positive self worth, self-esteem. So the good mental hygiene, proudly uphold your code of conduct, become an inner professional. So just like we have external professionals, we must do this with our own emotions and become an inner professional. So trying to develop that equanimity towards everybody. Everybody's equal in not wanting suffering and wanting happiness. Find that commonality. Avoiding the spiritual materialism, which comes from the 8 worldly concerns. And remembering that ethics, happiness too, is a habit. So it's a practice. It's a practice of ethics. Okay. So I wanted to do a little meditation on the 3 higher trainings, but before we do that, we've got time for some last couple of questions. What questions do you have? Oh, yes, Jessica.
Hey, so I have to apologize, for the cat distraction and that I'm tired. But he needs little snuggles at night, so I couldn't just like throw him off. As you've been talking, and you are trying to, thinking about the wisdom, and you are using your example of don't conflate people's behaviors with who they are, or, and then you use the example of people who vote for Trump. So for me, I have a very strong belief that people act their beliefs. So, but also if their beliefs are actively harmful to others, that is intrinsically bad. So like, I feel like there's maybe I'm seeing it as like the ethics side of this. They are actively harming people with what they are electing, what they are voting for. So how do we kind of work through that the ethics part, which I understand is our own ethics, but versus the avoiding the cognitive fusion there?
Yeah, so I think it just needs a little readjusting, because we can't just become an apologist for bad behavior. So we're not doing that. We do have to call out bad behavior, and it's bad behavior because it harms others. It's not bad behavior because they're bad people. So even there, we've got to be careful what conclusion we're drawing. But the other thing about ethics is that mostly ethics come as they're like a justification for our behavior. Until we bring awareness to it and we bring a sense of equanimity and we develop this common acknowledgement of humanity, all of these things which are reasoned, which come from when we really do the inner work. But mostly human beings, when they're upset, they're not logical. They're not consistent. And the third one is, so they're illogical, inconsistent, and incompetent, meaning they often do things that are going to harm themselves or others. So you take a whole section of people that are really disenfranchised, that are cross, that are, possibly for the first time in their lives feeling what it's like to be oppressed, that feel left behind. And all of these feelings are strong and they're not being appreciated. And so then you'll grab any old theology, philosophy to plonk on top to justify those feelings. And so that's why once people are upset, you cannot counter it with reason.
That's clear.
In fact, as we know, all the studies show the more reasonable you get, the more entrenched people get in their beliefs. So this happens because people are upset, because they feel bad. And so I think the big mistake that we make is we gloss over that and we go to the voting behavior or the wrong conclusions or the not sticking to the facts and all of this, and we try and deal with it with reason. And there's no place for reason in that. The place is for the heart to recognize. So I think that's politically, it's better to take that approach, and certainly as a human being, as an individual like you and me, to just remember that it really helps. And from Buddha's point of view, Geshe Zopa has this very nuanced way of saying it. He talks about us and people being under others' power. And it's a really nice saying, because others' power on a course level means other human beings, like we are under the power of politicians and Wall Street and all of that kind of thing. Absolutely. And it affects our lives. But we're also under others' power, meaning our emotions. And they are like the inner bullies and the inner oppressors. And then we're under others' power, which is karma. Karmic results are also pouring down upon us. So if we kind of remember that, and remember also that just like ourselves, when we're really stressed, when we can't relax, there's no way we make good decisions. And people can say all the logical, meaningful things in the world, and it's just going to boing right back off us again. And that's our starting point. And then sausages and smiles, Jessica. Find a way to offer sausages and smiles. It's really good, really. So, you've got all the right ingredients, but it's just tweaking them to look at it in the right order.
Which is the reframing.
Yep, that's it. Yes,
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's do our last meditation, just because it's nice to have an experience of it. And then we'll do I'll tell you a little bit about the homework, which is really easy and really fun. So the 3 Hydrating's meditation, you just take a nice deep breath, let out any stale air from the lungs. Another one, and as you breathe out, let your body relax and your shoulders drop. And another 3rd really deep breath in. And imagine that you're in a banana plantation and you're strolling through the trees. And this is like the jungle of samsara, and you're going to cut through their false appearances, and you're going to cut the root of samsara. So just as a woodcutter needs core strength to wield their tools effectively, our practice needs a support of ethical conduct. So feel the strength of the ethics in your core, the embodiment of your ethical principles radiating through your being. And recognize this as the confidence born of ethical living. It's the strength arising from integrity. And then reflect, was there a time when you felt the weakness of your own compromised ethics or the heaviness of regret? Was there a time when ethical clarity gave you strength and confidence to face challenges? So now imagine yourself preparing to cut down one of those banana trees. You need strong, steady arms. This is your concentration. Without concentration, the axe would slip, the cut would be messy, ineffective. So feel your mind becoming like those strong arms, stable, focused, unwavering. And just as arms need exercise to grow strong, our concentration develops through consistent practice. How does a scattered mind undermine your practice? What is lost to distraction? And what becomes possible when your concentration is strong? How does this steadiness serve your purpose? And now in your hands, a perfectly sharpened axe. This is your wisdom. It's not just any wisdom, but it's a precise understanding of emptiness. Look closely at the banana tree before you. Though it appears solid, you know its nature. It's layer upon layer with no solid core to be found. Ask, how has accepting appearances at face value kept you bound? And when has your wisdom cut through your confusion? What clarity emerged? So now, stable in your core ethics, arms steady with concentration, and your axe of wisdom sharp, you're ready. The banana tree before you is your false sense of self, appearing solid but ultimately empty. And with one precise cut, you strike at the root. The tree falls, revealing its true nature. No solid self to be found. What falls away when ignorance is cut? What illusions dissolve? And just as the banana tree, once cut, cannot grow again, when ignorance is cut with the three higher trainings, suffering cannot take root again in the same way. So recognize, how do ethics, concentration, and wisdom support each other in your own practice? Which aspect calls for your attention right now? And then take 3 deep breaths again and carry the insights of this meditation into your day, and dedicate to be able to develop these 3 higher trainings. And of course, dedicating, when we have these 3 higher trainings, what are they for? They're trainings for humanity, our humanity, trainings to help humanity, and trainings for much more, for liberation and enlightenment for all living beings. So, the homework, really quickly. We've looked at how the 3 higher trainings are not just good for our life now, but for the complete cessation of suffering altogether: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And the homework, page 12 of the notes, I think it's page 12. Anyway, it's the 3 reflections for the higher trainings, and it's shopping homework. So when you go shopping, have a look at the labels on the objects without getting involved in the objects. Practice becoming an inner professional. So when when we're going shopping, we look at the stuff on the shelf and we see the presentation, and then we're involved in the thing. Oh, this is the good one. But what I'd like you to do is look at the framing, look at the label, look at where it is on the shelf. Is it up high? Is it down low? And notice the presentation rather than the object. I'll tell you what, it's really hard, but this is a great way of training in wisdom. And there's also ones there's a little reflection there that you could do with anybody. You could do with Trump, or you could do with your mother or your father, with a teacher, anything. It's just a really short reflection. It's very helpful. And so enjoy your homework, enjoy your shopping homework, shopping without buying. And next week we're going to continue on a theme which is about finding the hidden wisdom in anxiety and depression. Because there is wisdom in there and we can find it. If we're going to go through the suffering of anxiety and wisdom, at least we've got to make it beneficial. So what we can do to work through it and find the wisdom in there. So thank you so much for coming along, and all the best, my dears. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Miffi. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Stella. No. Thanks, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know how hard it is to teach to non-speaking people and lots of blank screens. So I do appreciate the amount of effort that it